Okay, good evening. We can't officially open the Finance Committee meeting because we are missing one person who's on her way, so we don't have a quorum, but we don't want to hold everyone up, so we'll start. We have the school department here to talk about the Central School Building Project, so we'll start with that presentation and we'll open the meeting officially when Karen is here.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to come and talk about our Central School Building Project feasibility study. That's where we are in the timeline. I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Dr. Gina Williams, our School Business Administrator John Shea, Central School Principal Kate Byrne, Select Board Chair Carol Julius, our Town Administrator Charlie Seelig, Town Facilities Manager Brian Kiley, our Town Accountant Melanie Dean, Town DPW Director John Haynes, Community Member Architect Mr. David Horton, and Community Member Construction Mr. Donald McDougall. And as of today, Rebecca Fiddler from the School Committee will become an official member of the Central School Building Committee. We're here this evening to talk about what is a feasibility study. Feasibility study is required by the MSBA, the Massachusetts Building Authority. The feasibility study will carefully examine potential solutions to the issues identified at the Central School and will help us develop the most cost-effective plan to either renovate or total reconstruction. The feasibility study will identify mechanicals, ADA compliance issues, interior-exterior spaces, aging facilities, enrollment projections will be a considering factor, and municipal growth. Why and how we are here, what have we done to get here, and some of the projects. We had a boiler project at Central School in 2019 for $1,619,000. We were in the SOA. MSBA paid $568,012. We were reimbursed at a rate of 56.26%. In 2021, we put on a new roof at Central School for $1,831,614. Our reimbursable rate from MSBA was 57.74%. They paid $939,102 of the project. The statement of interest submitted for March 2022 was submitted to see if the MSBA would look at Central School for a core program. We are accepted into the MSBA at December 21st, 2022. The MSBA eligibility period began on April 3rd, 2023. There's a chart of the timetable and how we had to follow it. On March 28th, the school committee approved to go forward for us asking for and submitting a statement of interest for the core program for the Central School. On April 4th, the Board of Selectmen gave us permission to also go forward and to submit a statement of interest. From there, we followed the directives from the MSBA. We have 270 days to complete the eligibility period of deliverables on 12/29/23. The last deliverable that we have, that we had to provide information for, is this Friday, September 29th. It has been uploaded, and Mr. Kiley is going through it right now, and he will be submitting by Friday. Then the next part of the plan would be to go on October 2nd to ask for the town to approve a feasibility study to see what needs to be done, what can be done, and what should be done for the Central School Elementary School. The core program or statement of interest, SOI, how we got to the feasibility study. 37 schools applied. 5 schools admitted into core program. East Bridgewater Public School System was one of 5. This is a competitive process to be considered for the core program. You can find more information on the core program statement of interest process and overview at www.massschoolbuildings.org. The Massachusetts School Building Authority, the MSBA's grant program, is a non-entitlement competitive program, and its grants are distributed by the MSB Board of Directors based on need and urgency, as expressed by the district and validated by the MSBA. The MSBA completes an exhaustive review of available information regarding all districts that submit a statement of interest, or SOI, for the core program each year. The goals of this review include to determine those schools that are most urgent and needy relative to the pool of SOI submittals. The MSBA considers many factors when looking into totality of the SOIs, including, but not limited to, the age of the building, the amount of space per student, the current and projected enrollment, the condition of major systems of the school, the general environment of the building, and the appropriateness of the building to the educational mission. To collaborate with districts on a potential project they have identified as the priority school if they are filing more than one SOI for the given year. To understand if the MSBA is currently partnering with the district on another project already underway, which we had consistently done with the boiler system and then the roof system. To understand the range of options each district faces when planning for district-wide educational facilities. Central school building status on the mechanicals and the overall well-being of the building and what it handles. I'll turn that over to Brian Kiley. He is our facilities liaison for the schools through, he works with us to support us through the town.
Good evening. It's not my first time sitting here talking about the Central School. Through the Capital Committee, we've discussed many issues with the Central School. And over the past 10 years, we've tried to keep up with the ongoing maintenance of the building. The main building's 72 years old. The addition is 60 years old, and the modular units are 17. It's served the town well, but it's time for an overhaul of some sort. The mechanical systems in the building, the boiler room is good, but everything else needs to be replaced. It has original classroom univents that are 72 years old and 60 years old that are controlled by an old 72-year-old pneumatic air system. It's very difficult to regulate the temperature in the building or any air circulation. I think the plumbing in the building right now is, past couple of years, is the biggest issue. A lot of pipes failing that are buried in the wall, and it's becoming more and more prevalent that every month it's something else. We've tried over the past 10 years with the fiscal resources we have and the physical resources we have to maintain that building, but it's come to a point where it's just, we gotta do something. And we have an opportunity here with the MSBA to pay for more than half of it. And partnering with them on the roof project and the boiler replacement worked out quite well for us. One of the bigger issues in the building is ADA compliance. Number one, there's no elevator. There's only a chair lift that goes up 2 flights of stairs. It doesn't go to the 3rd floor, and we had to get 3 variances to have that replaced. They wouldn't let us go to the 3rd floor. So ADA issues in the school are an issue. I've seen kids have to be wheeled outside the building, around back, and come in the other way to be on the other level of the floor. I know the principals had to move classrooms around to accommodate ADA issues. Bathrooms are nowhere near ADA compliant. There's 2 ADA compliant bathrooms in that entire building, and those are in the modular units. The other ones, not to get too graphic, but you know, if a first grader has to stand on a step stool to go to the bathroom, it's not a good situation. And that's how the building was constructed 72 years ago. The fire safety systems in the building are obsolete and antiquated, and they need to be replaced. There's no fire doors in the building. The handrails and the stairwells don't meet code. It wasn't constructed for today's 21st century classrooms. Air circulation is a big problem that came to a head during COVID. There's only 2 exhaust fans in that building, and they're up in the attic, and they exhaust the entire building with 1 vent in every classroom. They work, but we barely meet the minimum air exchange rates that are out there right now. So people have to open windows that open, because 80% of them don't, and it's a 2-man operation to open a window. They're single pane glass, they're wood frame, except for the ones in the back side of the building that were replaced, I don't know, about 25 years ago. There's water leaks in the building, not from the roof, but groundwater gets in the building from running down the hill and going right through a door. We've added some area drains and perimeter drains, and it's alleviated some of the problem, but all the rain we've had in the past couple of months, it still leaked. And it comes in one door and goes out the other door. The modular classrooms were put in 2006. They've served the town very well, but they're coming to their end of their life too. They've held up well, but they're gonna need to be either replaced with something sooner or later. Many of the issues in the building, I think, that are facility related affects the education that I'm gonna let Kate talk to about space. I mean, we're literally using closets as educational space, because that's all there is. And, it's not, we're out of space, and everything is just antiquated. I mean, the building's 72 years old, and we haven't done any major renovations except for a roof 2 years ago and a boiler room. And the rest of it, we just pick away at it day by day, and it's reactive maintenance. And it's getting harder and harder to keep up with, so. I wouldn't want to see us lose this opportunity with MSBA, and the feasibility study is a requirement of the MSBA in this program. We had to do feasibility studies for the roof and the boiler room. It's just one of their requirements. And they will look at every aspect of this project, whether it's renovate that building and put an addition on it, or rip it down and put up a new one, or build somewhere else. That's what the feasibility study is gonna tell us, and give us a ballpark figure for each one of them. So, with that, I'll let Kate talk about educational
Thank you, Brian.
shortfalls.
Yeah, the impact, right, the impact on the educational environment. So I appreciate, I think you did a very thorough job. I want to give you some specific examples about some of the facility shortcomings that Mr. Kiley mentioned and what they actually look like and sound like in the building. So, for example, when we're talking about the aging univents and leaking univents and steam traps, we've had leaks on the main level floor from a univent that couldn't be shut off in a timely fashion because of the mechanisms that were broken in, parts that needed to happen, which then flood the room below, which then displaced 2 classrooms of students for 3 days to be able to rectify, dry, make sure the ceiling, the room below and everything else was ready for students to occupy. So that's 3 days of being displaced and maybe using the music room as a classroom, using and doubling up students in kindergarten classrooms. All of that are things that we've had to do because of some of these situations. We've talked about, we've had waste pipes underneath the building just collapse and have to be replaced. And as I'm talking about sewage waste pipes where you can have that odor happening, things that you can't see. Mr. Kiley did a nice job talking about the flooding that we experience in that little alcove area by the modular unit that does affect the mods, as well as the main part of the building, that bottom floor room right there in the 1951 part of the building also floods frequently. And what we're having now is these odors that sort of emanate, trying to figure out where is this smell coming from, which we can't always identify. But part of that issue is we are constantly saturated. And so there's lots of concerns there, just even from the maintenance of that lower level in the basement area. When we talk about the HVAC, right, the ability to have that airflow and circulation, which we don't have a lot with those vents that are in the attic. I have spaces that have no ventilation at all. We have a lot of non-traditional teaching spaces, some that don't. My art room doesn't even have a window or any other circulation. It does have 2 doors to one hallway, which is a nice improvement, but has no other opportunity for fresh air to be circulating in that space. The other challenges that we have when it comes to these facilities components is the leaking univents. Some of them are turned off because we can't stop the leak. They can't figure out how to stop it, so we don't get any heat out of it. We just turn it off. The univents in classrooms, they're old, we don't always have all the parts. They squeak and squeal. Things that we're used to, but they're so loud we have to shut the fans off because the teacher can't teach, the students can't hear the teacher over those sounds. You know, when we're moving forward, talking about 21st century learning, well, now we're talking about, you have these beautiful panels up here, right? These screens. We have touch views in our class, which are wonderful digital piece of equipment that requires electricity. So between our touch view panels, our document cameras, teachers using our front row speakers, which amplifies their voice for students, and students having devices and Chromebooks that need to be charged. We're blowing fuses in the 63 side of the building. Granted, 51's holding their own, but we don't have enough electrical panels and wattage to be able to support the needs that we have. So we're blowing fuses. So then there's no touch view, there's no printer, there's nothing happening in that room. Teachers smile, we're flexible, we teach in lots of different ways. But for 21st century learning and the demands of our curriculum and how we showcase that, technology is vital. The building's infrastructure does not support that. Some of the ongoing challenges we have just even internally are with our Wi-Fi and our Ethernet. No matter how much they expand the bandwidth, add access points, that building doesn't allow your Wi-Fi to be consistent from place to place. You drop off in a classroom, you can't go from one room to the other. Just constant things that we're used to dealing with and we manage through all the time. But when you think about, again, 21st century education, those are problems that we shouldn't continue to have to deal with. When we talk about our enrollment projections looking forward, right now we're at 516 is our enrollment at Central School. Last year we were at 530. So we're kind of at a small standpoint right now. But the projections just a year to 5 to 10 years from now are going to be increasing our enrollment. So for a variety of factors, just, birth in general, maybe there's a COVID bump, but also just the new development that's coming into town, we're going to be having an increase projection in students attending Central School. So we're only going to be growing. And so when we already have space limitations, some of that I talked about with non-traditional teaching spaces. Mr. Kiley mentioned that as well. Storage closets that we've converted into teaching spaces. It's great to have the staff that we have for adjustment counselors, but I need to have rooms and spaces for all of those people. So now we have, in order to have special education services, you need to walk through one room to get to the ELL services, to then get to the speech and language teacher, to get to the counselor. So everybody's kind of interwoven and connected. We'll use every space we have to instruct and teach, but ultimately, I'm violating confidentiality. Everybody goes with the flow, but that's what we're really doing. We have teachers who teach and assess in the hallway because we need more space. So we're using every ounce of space we have, and we'll continue to do that with a smile. But it's important for the community to know as we continue to grow and our enrollment grows, therefore I will need not only the space I don't have now, but more space for additional classrooms. So whether that be an 8th kindergarten classroom down the road or an 8th first grade classroom down the road. Right now I have 7K, 7-1, and 8 grade 2 based on enrollment. My preschool population is also growing. That I also know I'm going to have an influx. I can already see that in the projections already for this year based on needs of students aging in potentially to our program from early intervention services. So just know that the need and what we do in our building is going to continue to grow. Some of the other components when we talked about the modular unit, you mentioned the flooding and the typical life expectancy, and I think you might have mentioned that too, Mr. Kiley, for a modular unit, it's about 15 years. So we're over that by a couple at this point. What we know with the modular unit is actually the part of the building that has the best climate control, if we can say that, because they have their own rooftop heating and cooling vents. Some of the pitfalls to that is when we have extreme cold temperatures, those are freezing. So we've lost days in preschool. We've had to close preschool, open the rest of the building because we had no heat in those facilities. Again, it's because of the type of heating and cooling systems that they have, that the circuit boards are subject to extreme cold temperatures. So we faced that. We've had the day where we got to go an extra day last year at Central School because of the water main break with the pipes that lead into Central School. So lots of things like that continue to happen. What we've talked about is you can walk in Central School and it's bright and it's colorful and we paint it and the custodians do a great job waxing those floors to make it a shiny, happy place. And the staff and the students and the families are tremendous. And that's what really makes the school. But it's the things that are behind the walls that you can't see that we know are the systems that are failing. And those are the systems that need to be looked at. So we look for your support potentially to advocate that a feasibility study really makes sense as we try to move forward to make educational decisions based on the true need and how we best fix those needs at Central School. So I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Save them for the end.
Yeah.
You got it.
So the cost of a feasibility study, and that's, a lot of people want to know that. Please, The next page has, I say, please see similar districts for feasibility cards. Chart is on the next slide. The MSBA provided a little bit of guidance on how much funding a feasibility study may cost. They didn't give us an exact amount. Charlie was on a call with, Mr. Seelig and I were on a call the other day. We tried to get them to pinpoint a cost, but there was really no cost, that they said. My assumptions and where they got us up to, and just have an overall general conversation, and then looking at what our closest neighbor, Bridgewater and Easton, 800,000 and $1 million, and now we're a couple of years out of there, so maybe it's 1 to 1.5 million. And whatever's not used for the study can be given back to the municipality or credited towards the approved project. That money is also entitled to the 57.74% when it goes into the building project. But we gave you the appropriations table. East Bridgewater Central School is not on here, obviously, but these are the schools that are the closest and that are completed. Most are completed projects. Easton just completed last year. They were a new construction, and there's some still people in the eligibility period, and the construction phases, and the building, so try to give you this as sort of some data just to back it up. The asterisks from the appropriation tables from the previous slide denote preferred solution of the project was a new building K through 5 district-wide. 2 asterisks were preferred solution of the project is a new building 3 through 5 district-wide. 3 asterisks preferred solution of the project is a new building K through 2 district-wide. And 4 asterisks capacity analysis determined ability to consolidate the Heatherly and Cushing elementary schools, therefore no study enrollment options. And 5 asterisks provide solution, preferred solution of the project is a new building PK through 4 consolidation with the Hopedale Elementary School. Right now, we are asking for a PK through 2 feasibility study. They did ask in the meeting, and we had general conversation about this. I said for social and emotional well-being and 21st century education. They asked me about the Mitchell School. We had moved the 3rd grade to the Mitchell School and moved the 7th and 8th grade out when the junior, senior high school was built. And that was one of their, they said if you got to put the 7 through 8, you got to have 1,000 students in that building to get the money to build the building. So prior to my time, they moved the 7th and 8th grade there. We would love to move, I would love to move the 7th grade back down to Mitchell School and bring the 3rd grade back. I don't know if that's an option. I don't think it will be an option, and I can't imagine that I would ask for that, or that we would ask for that as a town and a school district, because we were told on the telephone that if we were to do that, that we would have to pay the MSBA back. We have to keep the 7th and 8th grade at the junior, senior high school for 20 years, because they gave us percentage to build the high school. So we're there, and I don't think anybody has an appetite for paying any of the MSBA back. So that's where we're at. They did ask about the 3rd grade going back down. Would that be something that we would look at? They'll look at everything in East Bridgewater, whether it's a reconstruction or a total reconstruction or just a renovate. They will look at every possible space that we have available. They'll look at the Mitchell School, they'll look at us, but they know that right now we are PK through 2, and that's where we're standing so that we can move the project forward. Funding and how it works, the percentage reimbursement, state reimbursement rate, and we are locked in at 57.74%. Example of an $80 million project plus $1.5 million, if that were to be the feasibility study. This is a hypothetical amount. I have absolutely no idea. It's just, I took some figures and put them together. An $80 million project with a 1.5 feasibility study would be $81,500,000 project. With the MSBA reimbursement rate at 57.74%, we're looking at receiving $47,581,000 back from the state. The cost of the project, if we were to do the feasibility study and the project and stay with the MSBA guidelines, it would cost the town $33,919,000. The feasibility study will be reimbursed at this rate if town moves forward. If we don't move forward with the MSBA or we do our own thing, we will not be reimbursed with the 57.74% rate. That's a hypothetical number. It's a hypothetical situation. I just want people to understand that we have an opportunity to work with the MSBA. We have an opportunity to That's where we're at. We started talking about this when the selectmen, or when the school committee gave us the okay for the SOI on March 28th. Then the selectmen took a vote on April 4th. We began to move the project. The MSBA will not let you go out and talk about these things until they come to your building, until they release it, until you have a school building committee. The school building committee, we put together in June. I understand that people feel that we may not have a lot of information out there. I do believe people in town understand that a feasibility study has to get done. It's like at your own house. You bring in 2 or 3 companies to look at doing a new roof, doing an HVAC system for your house. We've got to figure out what's going on with this building and understand what can we do and what can we not do. It doesn't say that we have to go forward into a building project. What we're asking for is to go out into a feasibility study to take a look at the central school. Take a look at it. For $1 million, I don't know, it could be $750,000. Maybe somebody comes in at $600,000. I have no idea. However, we have an opportunity to get reimbursed for this and to take a look at this building. We've put a new roof on for almost $2 million. We put a new boiler system in for $1 million. The MSBA told Brian Kiley and myself at a table during the roof project that the bones are good in the central school. That's why they allowed us to put a new roof on. If they did not think that that building could hold it, and that they weren't going to be partners going forward with the town of East Bridgewater and the public schools of East Bridgewater, they would have never allowed us to go forward with that roofing project or that boiler project. We've been in this model, in the SOI, and now into the core program since, I think we started in 2017, Brian, when we started talking about the boiler. Then 2018, then it went through. Then 2019, the boiler came in. Then we went back out and we got back into the queue for the roof. And then it was completed a year ago in 2022, 21, and end of the summer. And we just commissioned, right? We just finished paying. So it's a process. I think everybody understands that. We also have $1 million AstroTurf football field and track. We've been talking about these projects for the last few years. Last year on our budget hearing, I talked about it. Talked about track renovation. The Capitol had given us money for renovation for that. We knew that we were going to have to renovate it, and we knew that the turf would be next. If we don't keep up with these things, they're going to fall apart when they're going to be not usable. They're going to become unsafe. Somebody's going to get hurt on that turf. In July and August, we had to make a decision. We made the decision, yes, we need to go out, we need to have someone come in and look at this, take a look at it, and move forward. Or we're not going to play football at home, soccer at home, youth football, youth soccer, lacrosse, anything's going on that field. We made a decision to get someone to look at it, to see if we could plan it for the year. Brian brought in architects, engineers, companies to look at it. They said, you can move forward with this year, have play on this field, but you have to do a study. And they're still in the process at this time, correct?
Correct.
So I do think the schools are doing their due diligence along with the town, because we go hand in hand with these, because we talk about this all the time. If we don't go to a building project, at least we know what we're dealing with a feasibility study. Last night, talking to the selectmen, I understand their angst on, do we have the people to get a 2/3 vote on Monday night? I would hope that we did as a community. I would hope that people hear our communications from whether it's the district or central school or anyone else. I've been thinking about this and reflecting from last night and throughout the day today. We had a $26 million, close to $26 million budget hearing last year. There's 2 or 3 people that came to that budget hearing for the schools. And not one person asked a question that night. The schools and the towns are working, the town are working together, they're doing a great job. I have a great team, Mr. Seelig has a great team. We wouldn't put ourselves up in jeopardy if we thought this was not the right thing to do and the right thing to do for kids. Bring the feasibility study in, take a look at it. If it comes back, renovate, reconstruct, then we find out how much it's gonna cost, and then that's when I think the heartbeat increases, blood pressure goes up a little bit, and we have to make a decision. Do we move forward or do we not? We have an opportunity to work with the MSBA, we have an opportunity to hear from the building principal, and as this moves forward, we'll continue to give out more and more information. I think right now, we're just talking about the feasibility study, nothing more. Not talking about the roof project, we're not talking about the boiler, we're talking about just the feasibility study. So that's where we wanted to come to the selectmen, we wanted to come to you in Capitol, and we will continue to send out information the next couple of days and make calls and talk to people and do what we need to do. And on Monday night, we'll make sure that we will read the room. We will make a decision at that time to go forward with the vote or to pull the vote. I've talked to the school committee chair. We spoke last night. I think she's well aware of that. I think Mrs. Byrne understands that. I think her community understands that as she's talking to her teachers and talking to her families. And I certainly am listening to Mrs. Byrne and listening to you. So if you have questions for us, we're here and happy to answer.
I have some. So, Mrs. Byrne, you referenced the enrollment projections. Do you know what those, like, what does that look like in 3 or 4 or 5 years?
I know it's part of that chart. I'm not sure if I brought my single copy. What I can tell you is the 10-year projection was going to have us at, in a K-2 number at 465. That's not counting my preschool. My preschool today is 109. So basically, if you say 100 and, you're looking at like 575, and that's not saying if my pre-K goes up. That's just saying what my pre-K is today.
Yeah, I don't-
The projections are just K to, well, just starting with kindergarten. But so you're looking at like 575, and I'm at 516 today.
Okay, thank you.
And that was that was in 10 years.
Okay. So I want to say, I think the central school is amazing. I served on the central school parent council for 2 or 3 years, even after my daughter moved on to the Mitchell School I stayed on. That building, it definitely needs work. It needed work when she was there 8 years ago. I can't even imagine where it's at now. From a town perspective, I have concerns around the fact that this is being rushed over the 2-week period. I went back and I read through what Easton did as they prepared to go to town meeting. Their school building committee had 4 meetings before a town meeting. They had a PR campaign. They had a connecting campaign with town organizations. The committee participated in meetings with the MSBA. They had a visioning committee. I got all this from their minutes on their website. And I'm disappointed that the school building committee was formulated in June, and there was no meeting until last week. And I've heard from several people on that committee that they didn't even know they were appointed to the committee until last week. So, and I'd like to understand how the committee was formed, because there's no member from finance or capital on it, and to understand how the voting members were determined, because there's nobody from the town finance committee or finance team who is a voting member of that committee.
So I followed the MSBA, everything they told us to do. I sent out I sent out letters asking for people to come in. And we've called people, I asked people to join the building committee. We asked for people, you needed 2 people from the town one had engineering and one had architectural background. We asked for that. We sent letters out. This was the time frame I was given. We were given, we could go out with the building committee in June.
Right.
One of the issues I had was getting people together in June and July, or July and August. Maybe I should have done a little bit more of that, but it's hard to get people together after the 4th of July and then call a building committee. I didn't set the October 2nd. If we move it till December, like Charlie had mentioned to me last Friday, he came down to see me and he said, we'll have another town meeting in December. We can do another one, Liz. That's fine. I'll have a meeting every week. I sent letters out, Dan. I sent letters out. I asked people to join. I did exactly what the MSB had done. I talked to Alicia Cabral, the superintendent of Easton. I've talked to Christine Godino. She's a year behind us in theirs. I've talked to Mark Bodwell at West Bridgewater. They're doing a project next year. I talked to Derek Swenson when he was in doing his roofing project in his new elementary schools, or their new Mitchell school. I talked to them about how they were doing it, and they said, do not go out of order of the MSBA. They're very strict. It's very, you can't talk about it.
I get that.
I tried to stay within their confines. I didn't want to upset that. I didn't want them to say, well, you went out of order, Liz, you have to come back. Charlie and I were on a meeting on Monday. We asked questions, and I want to say her name was Mrs. Daniels, Sullivan, on it. We would ask the questions like, whoa, 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 whoa. So are you saying you want the 3rd grade back, that you're going to move the 7th grade? I said, no, I'm just asking those questions. Stay with the pre-K through 2. If you stay with the pre-K through 2, you're all right. So I stayed within the confines, I guess. I did not want to upset this because I know how strict the MSBA is. I didn't want to move around. I sent out every publication that I was supposed to send out. We have done every deliverable that was asked to give to the MSB on time. I sent a letter to the entire community asking for people to submit a letter of intent to join the building committee. They tell you who's on the building committee.
Oh, I know, I have the form here.
Yeah, yep, it tells you. And I asked for everybody, and we got we had 2 people.
The Parent Square message that went out, though, it was asking for the architect engineering position.
Yep.
And the person with knowledge on,
Yes,
yeah.
because that's what I was told, that was the letter. I mean, we just got today, I mean, the MSBA sent us what the article language has to look like.
No,
I mean, it's just so dictated on how to do things.
I went through and read the section 2.1 of the Mass School Building Authority, 963 CMR, on how the school building committee's formulated, and it says, the school building committee shall be formed in accordance with the provision of the eligible applicant's local charter and/or bylaws, and is recommended the city, town, regional school district, or independent agricultural technical school make a reasonable effort to include one or more of the following individuals. So there could be more than just one local finance official.
And at many school committee meetings, I mentioned this, that we were in a project. I mentioned it, I have a whole slide on it from the building, from the June budget hearing. I said, we'll be doing this. If anybody wants to be part of this, please do so. I don't know how else to get people. It's hard to get people on parent councils. It's hard to get people to come to a school committee meeting. It's hard to get people to come to any type of meeting, your meetings, selectmen's meetings. If it feels rushed, I apologize for that. I guess in my head, I'm more looking at this as, this is part of it. We're here now. I was told the date was October 2nd. At the school committee meeting, I mentioned it. I said, you know, we're starting with the building committee. We've got this going on. We've got the central school building, and we're moving forward. Throughout these last couple of weeks, we probably had an email every day or every other day with Nina Papastatis, our liaison to the MSBA. We ask her questions all the time. We asked her about switching the member of the school committee from the chair to someone else because the chair is extremely busy with her own work schedule at this time. They had to go to their legal team. It took them 4 days to get back to us. That's why tonight, we just got a clearance to put another school committee member on. So if it feels rushed, then that's my fault. I take full culpability of the school district. I always have, always will, regardless of who it is. However, it's a feasibility study. I feel that it's the right thing to do at the right time. If October 2nd doesn't look like we can get the votes and we don't have 2/3 of a vote in there, we'll push it out to December. Charlie told me he would have another special town meeting in December, or maybe in November. December it was him, but somebody might say November would be a better month. We have to do this by 12/29. If we don't, we're gonna get pushed out of the queue, and then we'll go to the end of the line. And then the MSBA may come back and say, you're not a good partner anymore. And that could happen. But I think that if we're gonna hem and haw about a feasibility study, and I understand that it feels rushed, but we went out for the roof and a feasibility study. We went out for the boiler and had a feasibility study. Within 1 day, we had emails going back and forth about that turf. That's about $1 million. And it was like, folks, does anybody know where we can figure out where to get, to come up with the money to pay for the study to come in? The school district pushed forth $48,000. That's one of the articles on Monday night's meeting to come back to the schools. But it was probably 48 hours. It was on the Tuesday or Wednesday that we had the meeting with the guy on the field. It was probably 109 degrees standing out there as we all stood there. That afternoon, I called Charlie. I said, this is where we're at. Melanie Dean made a suggestion. John Shea and I spoke about it. We went forward. Go for it. We got to get this in. We got to get kids to be able to play athletics. Because if we call athletics now, it's August and we're starting, I think we're a week out from starting football practice. We didn't have a team. We didn't have, it was us making a decision. The team that is, not Kate, but we had for the football field. Brian was there, John Shea was there, I was there. Charlie was in these meetings, John Haynes was on the field that day. We're doing what's right for the community and what's right for the school district. And I understand what you're saying. I said to Alicia, she said, yeah, it's grueling. And you gotta wait for them to give you the go-ahead. So the summer months were very difficult. I think her timeline was different than ours. We got put in it at the mid-year, at 12/29. On March, the selectmen said, or the school committee on the 28th said, okay, and then we started talking about it. Then, I have the timeline as well. We had 60 days to get the school committee, to get the school building committee together. And within those 60 days, we sent out, maybe I should have called everybody, said, do you want to be on it? If anybody wants to be on it, you can be on it. And I know that, but I don't have a lot of takers for this. So, and we had only two people that wrote in, Dan. Only two. Out of everybody in East Bridgewater, 16,000 residents, there's got to be more than 2 engineers, 2 architects.
No, understood. How were the voting members determined on the committee?
There's a whole MSBA, they tell you.
By the MSBA.
By the MSBA, not by us.
The legal department.
And we're asking about who can be the chair if the school committee chair is not the chair of the school school building committee, who can be the chair? That's our next question. Because now the school committee chair is off the team, so now we're asking, is it the school committee member? Does she become the chair? Or can someone else? So we're waiting for, I think it was the legal team.
Their legal team, you'll notice in the documentation, they say that they need 20 days to approve any and all changes because it goes through their legal team. But this building committee that has been created, the people that are in each category were the categories that were given by the MSBA legal team in that chart, and it followed past practice of East Bridgewater Junior Senior High School. So the legal team said, okay, but the school building committee as designed was approved by the MSBA legal department. It was there, they gave us a chart of the people that needed to be in different positions.
So the MSBA won't allow a local budget official or member of the local finance committee to be a voting member?
I don't know, I'll ask. If it, I'd have to look at that, and
She's,
then,
yeah, because it's listed that Melanie doesn't have a vote.
right. But that's what they're listed. If you ask me to ask them, I'll ask them. I mean, Charlie, where's Charlie?
Sorry, all the way back.
Oh, I mean, Charlie, you've been on those calls.
Right,
I mean,
as far, I saw no communications from the MSBA at any time that said specifically who could be a voting or non-voting member. The regulations themselves, of course, say, go by your local bylaw. We don't have local bylaw. You know, it may be that the committee that was formed is basically a duplicate of the one that was done for the junior senior high school, but I believe in this, obviously it was somewhere else next door at the time, but it may have been at that time, voting members were residents, non-voting members were non-residents, but it had nothing to do with the position or anything like that. It had to do with those.
because I don't have a
But
vote.
the thing is, we've had switchovers in the sense of some town officials who were residents then, they've been replaced by non-residents. So I saw nothing from the MSBA that said you had to say non-residents can't be voting members or anything like
Right.
that.
And I haven't said that.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't say you said that. I'm just
Right.
saying.
And that's why, when the questions come to me, I just send them to the MSBA and I ask. I mean, you've seen, that Charlie's on every email that we send, I'm on every email that he sends, and they'll say, well, go back to our legal team. That's what we got 3 times today. So,
Okay. If we can check, because I do feel
Sure.
strongly that Melanie should have a vote as the only finance representative on the committee.
I would think every member of the committee should have a vote.
I would agree
Unless
with
you're
that,
there
too.
in an advisory capacity, you should have a vote.
Yeah, the only ones who don't are John Shea, Mrs. Byrne, and Melanie,
And myself.
and Charlie. Oh, that's right, Charlie.
But there's no rhyme or reason when you look at those 4 positions.
Right. Any other, anyone have questions?
Dan, I did get, on the call the other day, they had an actuary who does the enrollment projections. I can certainly send those to you.
Oh, no, I just, I was
Yeah,
curious.
but they told us about the buildings and this and that in the town, so I can also send those to you.
Did you say you had a
Yeah,
question?
I do. I have 2 questions. So one is, and maybe I missed this because I was taking notes. How do we select who does the feasibility study, or do they tell us? Like, is there any framework for how that is
Brian, you wanna talk about it?
chosen?
We'd have to do an RFP for proposals,
Well, actually, RFQ,
RFQ for qualifications.
so what would happen is we would, similar to not request for proposals, but we're not dealing with money first. What happens is we'll put the ad out, firms will apply by, and the MSBA may have specific forms that they use for the RFPs. They submit the request for qualifications, the building committee would make a choice, rank the firm, say, this is the firm we wanna go with. There might be interviews and such along with the applications, and it might pick 3 or 4 of them to interview depending on how many actually apply. But firm A is the top choice. We sit down with firm A and work out a price and what that's gonna include. Obviously, during all these steps in the process, we're keeping the MSBA informed about what each step of the process we're going through and what's happening.
Thank you. And then my next question is on the slide that says cost of a feasibility study. The last bullet says, whatever is not used that was out of the projected 1.1 to 1.5 million dollars that it may cost, since we don't know. Whatever is not used for the study can be given back to the municipality or credited towards the approved project. but will it be? So I know it can be, but is there somewhere where it will say it will definitely be used towards the project or given back in the event that it's not used?
I believe when they discussed that with us, is that if we go up to 1.5 million and it's $1 million, that 500,000 would go back to the town. We go back,
Right, because,
correct,
okay, the town appropriates the money, let's say they appropriate 1.5 million, we only spend $1 million. The 500,000 cannot be used for anything else without town meeting approval. Either we close the account out, basically we say, the project is ended, we close the account out, the money goes back into the town's coffers, in the sense of the general fund or free cash. Or, a future town meeting says, we still have 500,000 left, let's use it on likely the school project, or the school project. But it's a town, it's either we close the account out because we're not moving forward, or we decide through town meeting, the voters make that decision about how to spend that money.
Great, thank you.
Aaron, no?
So, talking brass tacks, what is the amount of money that you would want recommended for approval? I mean, is it 1.5 million? Is it 750,000? I mean, what?
I mean, I think we're in this together.
Okay, well.
So I would say one
my-
not to exceed 1.5?
And my 2 cents on it is this, you want the best selection of firms, that means a firm that would say, we're not gonna do it for $750,000. So we're not even gonna send in a reply to your RFQ. You're gonna lose firms that you might actually want. Given the numbers we saw on that table, that's somewhere in the, the presentation, certainly $1 million would be a starting point. I would be going up above that. When we talked to the MSBA last week, when we were talking about enrollment projections, we also talked with them about the price. And they, as Liz said, they're not gonna be giving us a definite number. But they said, this sounds weird, they wanted us to be conservative, i.e. put sufficient money in there to cover, so you do not have to come back to a future town meeting and say, look, we like this firm, but we only had 1.2 million and they want 1.3, will you give us another 100,000? So the other direction is, put sufficient money in there to get a well-qualified firm for this project. If you do have money left over after negotiations with the firm, then the money's there, it's set aside for whatever the town wants it to be.
Anything else? Okay.
Motion in order?
Hmm?
Motion in order?
Well, we have to open our meeting.
Okay.
Thoughts? So we're gonna officially open the finance committee meeting at 6:55 PM on September 26th. So we'll go through the warrants. Obviously, that's when we'll do the, yeah. So if there are no other questions, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I assume you had to open yours, but, okay. We are joint with the Capital Committee tonight. As everyone knows, we have special town meeting next Monday. We have the warrant in front of us, so we'll go through the warrant and talk through articles. Does anyone need a copy? Charlie and Melanie, you might want to come up. Do you want us to do the two that you need and then you can adjourn?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Unless you want to stay
yeah,
for
no,
this
no, let's do those.
riveting. Okay, so we're gonna go a little out of order, so we can just do the ones capital needs to opine on, and then we'll go back to the regular agenda. So I think that would start with Article 4. Yep, okay.
Is that just the capital one, or?
That's the capital one, and then I think capital should vote on Article 6 as well,
And are we passing
which
Article
is the
7?
appropriation
We're passing
for the feasibility study.
Because our plan would be to pass over 7, since right now they're doing the survey work and
Right.
Right.
setting up the construction documents
What
for,
do I want to, we have a motion for, you want to vote on 4?
I was gonna let him explain,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And then we can have to open discussion. Okay, so let's start with Article 4, please.
and some of these are not, of course, technically capital plan, qualified for the capital plan or for capital budget articles. We just felt that try and makes things simple. We have separate operating articles, but we wanted to put any non-operational budget articles in one article just to move this along. Obviously, the townspeople can place a hold on any of these, not necessarily vote them en masse. If someone says, well, I want to vote yes on one of them and vote no on another, they'll still be able to do so.
So we have a couple here from the town clerk, the enhancement of the archival space and security. So basically, anything that's ready to come out of the offices downstairs comes up to the archive room, which is right out the hall here. And there's issues as Katie's stepped in as clerk until the town election and hopefully permanently. She's been attending trainings, and it gives you what you should have in your archive room as far as security, and we're not quite there. There's, first, I feel like fairly minor dollar amounts. There are some things that we could do that would get us more in line with how our archives should be stored. And there's all sorts of information that we house in archives, and I think almost goes back to you never want to be on the front page of the paper. And, you know, just knowing that your information is secure, that's basically what this is about. And Katie, if there's anything you want to add, but.
There's a third seat up here, Katie.
Great. No. So yes, I think Melanie covered most of it. The archival space needs a little bit of work. And we need to secure it just so that, you know, we have all the history of the town in there. And we just want to make sure that we've created a space that is secure and will protect it for generations to come. And King Information, who does a lot of our archival, had recommended that we do a little bit of some changes up there just to make the space, since other people use it and there's other departments within the town that use that space as well. We need to keep our archival space separate and more secure so that it, you know, nothing gets accidentally damaged.
And then if you want to talk about
And the dog program, this year when we were doing the licensing, we did a little bit of history. The dog program was created actually by a resident in the early 2000s. And I was informed by Ryan, the director of IT, when we did have some issues with it this year, that it is outdated and will not be able to be recreated. So
this is like the database?
yes,
Oh, okay.
that we actually store all of our, you know, that we use for all of our licensing. And unfortunately, I did not actually have access to it this entire dog season because something happened and they were not able to recreate it from my computer at the time. So this was a real issue that happened this year. So we did some research, and the majority of the communities in our area use a program that's very easy for us to transfer all of our information on. And it's a small fee of about $3,500 to set it up, and then a fee that we will be able to cover in our office moving forward, just to protect it and to hopefully not have happen what happened this past year again in the future.
I think the third one goes kind of hand in hand.
I think.
I have an email
Yes.
from, yeah, so
Oh, sorry.
Ryan
Has
McGonigal was
conjunctivitis.
not able to be here tonight. So the town hall attic environmental control and security project, there's two reasons that he's asking for this. The first is environmental. Last winter, he deployed devices to monitor, report, and alarm environmental issues to two locations at Town Hall, the town server room, and this data closet. So there's a data closet in there. The devices log different types of issues depending on the model, temperature, humidity, smoke, fire, smoke flooding, to give examples. He's in the process of adding additional devices to other locations, but these were his first areas of concern. Beginning in May, this location has periodically but consistently been alarming for temperatures in excess of 92 degrees. Not good if you have a data closet in there. While each device has different specifications, all equipment in this location is designed to run in temperatures no greater than 86 degrees. He had configured the device to both text and email and the cause of the issue with the temperature, but was forced to disable the notifications due to how excessive they were, to give you an idea of how often it was alarming. The project would look to enclose the area directly around the data closet with walls and a door, as well as mount 2 split duct cooling units in case of device failure to handle the heating issue. The second concerns security. The data closet is currently secured with a wooden frame, chicken wire, that's nice, and a padlock from the rest of the attic. In addition to the new walls and door, I'm looking to add on mechanical locks and access controls, which would be linked to the town hall police department system that was put in place last year, to both the new door as well as the entrance door to the attic. The attic also acts as secure document storage for town hall. The additions would be better control access to these records, as well as to give us the ability to log the access by user. So, that's very thorough and makes a lot of sense. Shouldn't have chicken wire.
If you want to switch with John on the next one.
Okay.
Because we're gonna do traffic improvements.
Okay.
The next one's traffic improvements.
Are you still here?
John, yep, he's still here.
This is in regards to a traffic safety improvement at the intersection of Central and Union Street in the downtown area. Earlier this summer, after a study had been done by both Old Colony Planning Council and independent engineering, it was recommended to the select board that the intersection be changed from a two-way stop and a caution on Central to an all-way, four-way stop, to try and address what is a very common, I think it's the 4 tires crash rate incident intersection in Bridgewater. And to do so, we're requesting the additional funding to actually implement that. That would include 4 of the rapid flash stop signs. Each of those are about $1,700 to purchase. Additional traffic markings, as well as advanced notification, and the largest is actually changing the signal head that is on a mast that hangs over the intersection at this point. Right now it flashes yellow caution for vehicles that are proceeding on Central Street and red for vehicles on West Union intersection. But it would also be, it's old technology, so it would be converted to be LED technology as well at the same time, as well as becoming a 4-way stop.
So there'd be flashing stop signs at all 4 corners plus overhead?
Correct.
Okay.
Is that the only location we're spending money on for this?
Yes.
Any questions for John? Okay. And then,
I think you've talked a little bit about the turf field already. So basically what had happened this summer was there was a genuine concern that the field would be usable this coming academic year. The problem is that, well, obviously if it wasn't, spending money today, tomorrow, yesterday, whatever, what isn't gonna change anything. It wasn't as if we were gonna replace the turf field in the couple of months we had available during this summer. However, in order to replace it in '24, the summer of '24, while school is out, testing the design, the construction document creation, the bid process, and then having a sufficient lead time between going out to bid and getting bids and actually having a construction company come in, let's say June 15th, or to start work for those months, meant we needed to start this summer, not wait until town meeting in October or November, or whenever we were gonna end up having a town meeting. In terms of talking with the DPW staff and school and myself, we thought, well, we're not, wasn't an emergency in the sense of this issue has come up before with the capital planning committee, with the finance committee, in the sense of we're going to have to do something with the turf field. So it was not a situation we wanted to go to the finance committee to ask for a reserve fund transfer. Instead, the other possible source of funding without a town meeting was going to be through the revolving funds that the school maintains from its rental of the fields and other locations there. They agreed that they would spend down the money. Now, as far as I know, bills have not come in yet. So we've actually, the firm that's doing the work has not actually billed the town. So instead of replenishing the revolving fund, this would be a separate appropriation at town meeting for this particular purpose. That would pay for the work that the firm is doing. We would get, through the bid process, come back to a future town meeting, I expect this winter, with bids in hand, an accurate price, and be able to then, if the town wanted to move forward with the replacement of the, I think it's the field and the track.
Replacement of the field
Field.
and some significant
Right.
resurfacing
Yeah,
of
of the track.
the track.
We'd be, you know, if the town wanted to move forward that way, we'd be able to do so. If the town said no, well, eventually we know it's going to be in a state of ill repair or unusability, because think of it, the turf field sort of has a bounce factor. If it doesn't bounce, it doesn't protect the players who are out there. And therefore, it's not usable. And if we don't spend the money at some point, we'll have an unusable field. At some point, we'll have to do rescheduling. At some point, town will have to make a decision what they want to do instead. But this summer, the thought was, let's at least move forward with this first phase of the project. And if town meeting says no to doing the replacement, then we'll have to look at the other options.
We're just looking at an end-of-life issue as opposed to anything more.
Correct. The average life of a synthetic turf field is 8 to 10 years. The manufacturer's warranty is actually 8 years. Our turf field now is at 12 years. This will be the 12th season. So we have extended the usable life beyond 50%. And one of the issues being, though, that degradation, once you reach the end of what's considered usable life, the degradation happens extremely quickly afterwards. It falls off very fast. And the issue that we have is the actual fiber
People playing on cement.
is deteriorate, well, it's actually the
Or
chrome
close.
rubber infill
Yeah.
is the issue, and so you lose the structural stability of the field,
Okay.
which then becomes a safety hazard.
Okay. Any other questions? So actually, this is the design work. Did this also include the work that was done to determine if it could be used this year?
That's a
No, it's a separate line item.
We
The
funded that
Article 8,
directly from our operating
But
budget.
that's Article 8.
yeah,
okay.
and that would go back into the line item to replenish. So obviously Brian and John had not budgeted for that.
Okay.
Alright.
Good on this article?
Yep.
Okay. On our side, do we want to entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 4?
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 4.
A second.
Recommended by Lisa, second by Karen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Capital recommendation for Article 4.
Move to recommend the capital eligible projects specified in Article 4.
Second.
Second.
Wooden second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And with the finance committee hat on, would we want to be doing the general stabilization, or do we want to go use capital
I think we should use general stabilization.
for the smaller projects here?
It's
Okay.
it's like $100,000, right, all in?
Okay.
The other one that I think capital should be part of the discussion on is Article 6. This is to see if the town will vote to appropriate, or transfer, the funds for the feasibility study. So,
You can put a dollar amount in that?
the dollar amount's gonna be in the motion, correct?
Excuse me.
This was left. Because, I mean, and I don't think I don't see how anybody could make a recommendation without an amount.
That's true. That's a very fair point. And,
So not to exceed 1.5?
I'd make that motion on this side of the table, not to exceed 1.5 for the purposes specified in Article 6.
Well, we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. 31.
Dave, why vote against? What's your thought process?
For more information and what not, I just wanna pass on it for now, for me. Thank you.
all right, Article 6 on our side, is there a motion to recommend or not recommend up to $1.5 million in the motion for Article 6?
I'll make that motion
Recommend?
to recommend up to, but not to exceed 1.5 million.
Okay, motion by Karen. There a second?
I would almost second it to say like to the December as was proposed,
Push
but we
it to
can't do that,
December.
right?
I mean, we can, so if we don't have a second, you could amend the motion, or ask Karen to amend the motion. But if Karen doesn't want to, then if we don't have a second, we can't move on. We would entertain a new motion. So there's no second to approve. Okay. Is there another motion someone would like to make regarding Article 6?
So can we make a motion to allow for more time to communicate to the town and make it December something, or November or December? I don't know what I'm trying to say,
The
but,
next town meeting after this one.
yeah, but it has to be before December 29th. But, that way it will give more time to communicate, as that was a lot of concern. Does that make sense?
Isn't it then the job of the school committee to convince the people at town meeting to make a determination? And if they can't, to withdraw the article at that point and have to come
Oh.
back anyway?
Versus us here.
True.
No, I'm just saying if, what was said was, if we don't read the room correctly and we don't think we have the votes, we're not gonna go forward. So
They'll
it would
pull
go
the
there
vote.
anyway.
Right, they'll pull the vote then. So you're just deferring it to the,
Correct.
to the town meeting.
If it happens on Monday night, they've got the right room, great. That's my thought.
So I guess the true is based on the information that we received tonight. Does the committee feel comfortable making a recommendation that the town
Hear it.
appropriate, borrow, or transfer? Because we're gonna be asked when I'm up on this, stage, they're gonna ask what, finance committee's recommendation was. So based on that we've received the information at this point in time, are we comfortable recommending the town to support this?
I guess I'll second, because there's definitely a need for the school. And to that point, maybe have town, dictate whether they agree with, they have enough information. I don't know.
Okay. So we have a motion by Karen, second by Lisa. Any further discussion? I will say, I think I was quite clear earlier. I have extreme concerns about not the structure, but the leadership within the school building committee. The school building committee's has had one meeting. I attended that meeting. There really wasn't much of an agenda for that meeting. And going forward, if we're going to move forward with spending $1.5 million on a feasibility study and/or a potential school building project, communication needs to be better with the town. It has to be proactive, because there is a true need at this school, and it would be a darn shame to lose out on this opportunity to get MSBA funds, but we're asking our taxpayers to spend a lot of money potentially, so, and that's what we have to look for, so. With that, I'll take a vote on the motion.
I'm feeling conflicted.
Okay.
Sorry. I think your point is so good.
It is.
And I don't know how to codify that in recommending this article as it stands, except to put it out to the voters, and just as was mentioned, if the building committee sees they're not gonna get the votes, they'll say, we're gonna wait. But that message of leadership in the building committee, how do we get that across in that scenario where we're letting the voters?
I mean, I think any one of us, we're residents, we can stand up on town meeting floor and speak that
Okay.
evening if we feel strongly enough about that.
Dan, whether we approve or don't approve, will this article go
Yes,
to town meeting?
yeah, this is
Okay,
just
so
our
it's just one
recommendation on,
recommendation.
do
Okay.
we think the voters should approve the 1.5 million? Which, so we're in a very weird spot because we have concerns about some of the structure with the school building committee, and what's been done to date, but I think all of us think a project needs to be done and the
Yes.
feasibility should happen. And
Yes.
the question is it at the right time?
And we wouldn't
Alright.
wanna lose out on it, that's
Right.
the catch.
Did you want to say
I
something?
just want to say that what you're saying is being heard by at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 members of the building committee right now, so it's not, it's not falling on deaf ears, that want better information and better communications as the project moves forward.
Well, don't take that, I mean.
No,
you
no,
wanna
I
go
know,
to
but I'm saying, no, but I'm saying there's at least 6
Yeah,
people
which is good.
just in this room
Yeah.
that can help
Get that
facilitate these conversations.
Yep.
So.
Point well taken, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a
Alright, thank
motion
you.
to approve in a second. Any further discussion?
No.
If not, I will entertain a vote. If you're all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Or,
Did you vote?
I did,
Oh, okay.
yeah. You too? Oh,
All right, so I will approve it as well.
okay. Okay,
Make a speech.
We're gonna
Make
do a
a
motion,
speech.
because we're gonna
I
adjourn.
so
won't
you
do
want
that.
to adjourn? Yeah, and then we'll go back.
Motion
to
for
the rest of
capital
the
to
articles.
adjourn?
Second.
Thank you for leaving, folks.
Okay, we'll resume back to Article 1. So this is to see if the town will vote and transfer sum of $56,739.80 from free cash. So what happened here was there were bills that were received.
This
No,
was,
this is the
so
fire
Sorry.
So we have,
this, the fire department, had a contract up in FY '23, so during the annual town meeting, we approved an amount to be paid retro, for FY '23. However, the contract wasn't then signed until FY '24, so we couldn't carry that amount into FY '24 to make the retro payment. It had to close out to free cash, and now we need to reapprove it, so it's really a duplicate of something that we did in the spring. That money then fell to free cash. We need to pull it out again so that we can make the payments retroactively for FY '23 for the firefighters.
Any questions?
No.
We'll entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 1 to town meeting.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 1.
I'll second.
Recommended by Lisa, second by Karen. Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Article 2 is going to be passed over.
Correct.
Article 3 is going to be passed over. Now we're at Article 5. So this was so when we went through the budget process, we talked about if the numbers for new growth from the assessor's office came in higher than expected, we would look to reimburse some of the budgets that were cut at the annual town meeting. And so the amounts being proposed to add back would be $5,000 to professional services, $5,000 to police office supplies, $20,000 to police cruisers, $10,000 to maintenance of buildings and grounds, $25,000 to school maintenance of buildings and grounds, $10,000 to care of public grounds, and $10,000 to MS4 investigations. Any other? No? Okay.
No, this, our new growth came in higher than we had anticipated when we did the budget for the annual town meeting, so it gives us a little more room to give back to some of the departments that we had pulled from.
That's always nice.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's not 100% of the new growth, some of it's being put into
Right.
overlay.
Yep.
Right.
Is there significance to the different colors?
That's one of my questions.
So some of, I didn't know it was gonna show in color. There were some, like, so the FinCom reserve, it was probably one we weren't going to give back. We were gonna keep at the level, the same with the bottom two
Okay.
lines, so.
Thank you.
So we'll entertain, or I will entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 5.
I recommend Article 5 as is.
Sorry.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any fire department stuff in here?
No. Not in this one.
All right.
That's okay. I recommend, I move to recommend Article 5.
Okay, moved by Karen,
I'll second.
second by Lisa. Any discussion?
In the amounts that,
In the
Yes,
amount,
in the amounts that you.
Yeah, and I'll make sure we have that in the minutes. Any discussion?
I think so.
All
Sorry.
those in favor?
My phone's on.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's a very loud buzz.
Do you wanna skip ahead, and then come back and finish with 6?
no, they did 6.
We did
Oh,
6.
did funding source though? We need to,
So I'm sorry, we did not do funding source, so we can revisit that.
yeah, so I don't know if we wanna just finish.
Yeah, we can finish
with
real
the
quick and
rest
then
of
we'll
them.
go back to that,
That's gonna be,
because there'll be discussion there,
yeah,
I'm sure.
so 7 is being passed over.
Article 7 is going to be passed over. Article 8 is to reimburse the facilities budget for the,
Testing work that was done at the turf field.
Yes.
$7,850.
And this is gonna be from raise and appropriate. I
We
think-
had
no, it's-
general
it's- oh,
stabilization,
no,
we
okay,
could
general-
do,
We have sufficient
we
funds.
could do raise
I
and,
think it's more appropriate to come out raise and appropriate.
I would agree based on the growth numbers that we got, yeah. So I'll entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 8.
I'll make a recommendation to approve Article 8 with the raise and appropriate update or
As the
revision.
funding source, yep,
Yes.
okay. Motion by Lisa,
I'll second that.
second by Karen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 9 is from the town clerk's office. Raise and appropriate $6,000 for clerical salaries to cover additional time for town elections. Welcome back.
hi.
Yes, so the Board of Selectmen on July 17th did an overtime and compensatory policy, and I do not have overtime in my budget, and it is required that my department doesn't have overtime. And due to the Votes Act, early voting is now mandatory. It's unclear funding going forward. A lot of times the state will still give us grants, but based on our past data that I looked at from previous elections, it costs about $1,500 in overtime per employee for early voting and election periods. We have been getting money back from the state. I imagine eventually that will stop and they'll expect us to cover it. So I'm requesting, based on the policy that was put into place, that I have overtime added to my budget in the appropriate amount to cover the cost going forward. And I did it for $3,000 per election because I have 2 employees. This year I have 2 elections.
Right, one's coming up, the presidential primary this coming March, and then the town election in May.
May, yep. Nope, makes sense. Entertain a motion to approve or not approve Article 9.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 9.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Karen, second by Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Article 10 is to raise and appropriate $2,250 to the assessor's payroll for a special longevity request for a staff member.
Right, in the clerical contract, there's a provision for this. There are some other contracts where the employee has to give notice to the department head. It's usually the previous fiscal year, that the upcoming fiscal year. There's nothing in the clerical contract about this. This is a limited time bonus. Usually it's for a employee who's going to be leaving the town's service in the next 3 years. And I assume that's going to be the case here, but it's only in the last couple of months the employee told the department head that of her plan, and we have to follow the contract, and we have to put in sufficient money to cover this.
And we talked about going forward when negotiating contracts to try and get us clause in there that they have to notify by
With the
fiscal year end of the
right,
previous
right,
year,
right.
so it can be budgeted for.
We won't be negotiating the clerical contract for a while again. We
I
just
know.
finished. But
For
I'll
all
try-
contracts, I
I'll
guess,
try-
though.
Yes, but I think many of the other ones do have it. The clerical, for whatever reason, does not. But I'll try and remember that in a couple of years.
I'll entertain a motion to approve or not, or recommend or not recommend Article 10.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 10.
I second.
Motion by Lisa, second by Karen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 11, to raise and appropriate $3,300 to assessor's payroll for a retroactive payment to a staff member on an education incentive.
So, again, the clerical contract does allow for education incentives for associates and bachelor's degrees in various subjects. Initially, the employee was told that their degree did not qualify. The matter was grieved up to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen worked out a decision that would have this employee's degree qualify. So we're asking for the amount for that incentive now to be included in the line item.
Okay. Entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 11.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 11.
I second.
Motion by Lisa, second by Karen. Any discussion?
No.
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Article 12, Fire Chief.
That's him there.
So, so as we know, our budgets were abbreviated last year due to, constraints of another town, which is expected from time to time. However, I still have 2 firefighters out long-term on the job injury with no anticipated return date. I have a firefighter out on off-the-job injury it'll be about 7 months. I have another one out off-the-job injury for about 3 more months. Both of those required surgeries. I have 2 firefighters in the Mass Fire Academy. When they get out, I'm gonna send 2 more. And as you know, we got a SAFER grant to bring us to be able to have staff to 6. Last year, many times I had to drop to 4, which leaves nobody in the station for the 3rd call. So this year I decided that it would not drop below 5. Of course, I made that decision before I had all these people dropping out. So it is what it is. So the $60,000 from the ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation is because we actually brought in $70,000 more than we anticipated last year. So the ambulance account brought in $1,100,070 by forecast between 1 and 1.1 million. So I was looking at be able to, take 60,000 from that account, which won't affect next year's appropriations out of it for FY '25's budget by any means, just to try to maintain adequate staffing.
Makes sense. I'll entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 12.
I recommend Article 12.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Karen, second by Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0 to 1. Article 13.
So Article 13, so we rent gear, protective clothing when we send firefighters to recruits to the academy. We've did that after we bought, set of gear costs about $3,000 or $4,000. In the beginning, when I started doing this, we would just let them use their town issued gear and it would come back destroyed. So I can rent gear for about $400 a person rather than, spending $4,000 to buy them a whole new set, even though the set they had was new. So when, back in March, apparently, when I ordered this gear, well, my deputy chief ordered the gear, and the invoice was attached to that order way back in March. So I never saw the invoice, or he sent it to me, but I read the email, I never saw the invoice. It was attached to the email, that's for certain. I just oversaw it, I overlooked it. So we had to order 2 new sets to the 2 that are in the academy now. They're like, oh, you have an outstanding balance of X amount of dollars. I'm like, wrong fiscal year, hence we have to go back prior year bill.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 13.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 13.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Motion by Lisa, second by Karen. Any discussion? All those in
No.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Article 14 was just a complete oversight on my part. So back in September, the fire and police department's receiver site, that I will not mention where it is for security purposes, I was in that section of town talking to my radio and I saw the reception was really poor. So I went to the receiver site and found that a mouse had gotten into the
I remember
receivers.
this, yeah.
I remember
So-
this too.
I think I came to you guys
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
transferred money from
Yeah.
overtime or whatever to that account. Well, that was in September, October. I got the receivers in, what did I put down there? It doesn't say when I got them. I got them, I believe, in August of this year, 11 months later.
Oh, boy.
So total oversight on my part, when I went to encumber money, never even, it was not months ago, I just
Right.
forgot. So we had set money aside for that, which obviously had turned into free cash because it wasn't used. And, cause I got the receiver, I'm like, ooh, I don't remember paying that bill. And of course I didn't, and there was exactly like $8,300 left in that account for that receiver, so.
Okay.
And that bill actually isn't really even due till October 6th, which is convenient.
So I'll entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 14.
I recommend Article 14.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Karen, second by Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Article 15, to see if we will transfer $102,056.16 from free cash to the opioid stabilization fund. Everyone's favorite topic.
Another housekeeping that has come up should not come up after this town meeting. The legislation wasn't put in place to for us to properly move this money before the fiscal year '23 ended. So we had set the money aside with the intention of moving it to the stabilization fund that was approved a few town meetings ago. The legislation never happened, the money had to close to free cash, and now we need to move it to the stabilization fund. So it's all money that came in as from the state as part of the opioid settlements, and we established a stabilization fund, like I said, a few town meetings ago, and we just need to get that money over there.
Okay,
finally have the mechanism to do so.
sure we'll get some questions on that one.
We will.
So I'll entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 15.
I'll make a motion to recommend Article 15.
I'll second.
Motion by Lisa, second by Karen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are not the only town dealing with this back and forth. This is a hot
Yeah.
topic with towns.
Article 16, we do not need to vote on because it's not tied to finance or a money request. Article 17 is to see if we will appropriate $162,333.22 to pay costs of the library flat roof replacement HVAC project. The amount shall be used in addition to the $814,120 borrowing authorized on June 5th, 2023. So my understanding is this money was left over from the money we borrowed for the boiler replacement. And we can take it from there and use it for another capital project.
Yes, but
That can be bonded for a similar length of time.
So it's,
the roof falls in. So for example, we had thought originally, well, we could move this over and use it towards the feasibility study. A feasibility study can only be bonded for 5 years. The boiler was bonded for 20 years. We can't do that. So the roof project falls in line, and that's, going on right now. So we figured that was a good use of the funds at this point.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'll entertain,
It's going to have to, in the article, in the motion, make mention that it's coming from that specific account for the
go
boiler.
in the motion, yeah.
Yes.
So I'll entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend Article 17.
I make that motion to recommend Article 17.
I'll second that motion.
A motion by Karen, second by Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Article 18, we do not need to vote on, so we'll go back to Article 6. So we need to have a discussion on, are we going to transfer from available funds, meaning a stabilization account? Or are we going to borrow for the feasibility study if it's passed? Some of the discussion that I had with Melanie and Charlie over the course of the past couple weeks, when we met earlier today on our stabilization for capital is at 4.4 million.
1.4.
I think, actually, I did write it. Oh, no, I didn't. And our general stabilization's at 2.5. So if and we'd have to take it from capital, correct? So that would take our capital stabilization down to $3 million. I did ask Melanie to check with our bonding agency if we were to borrow in the future with a stabilization fund at $3 million, would that impact our bond rating? Unfortunately, we didn't get a crystal clear answer on whether that would happen or not. We do say in our, I don't know what document it's actually in, that says we should have 5 to 10%.
It's
Our fiscal
In the-
yeah,
policies.
What was that?
financial or fiscal policies for the town.
Policy, okay. So it says that our fiscal policy says we should have 5 to 10% of total operating costs in our capital reserve budget. So that would put us anywhere between 3 and 6 million is where we should be, right? So if we
So
borrow,
that's to the low end.
so this would put us at the lowest amount in the capital stabilization fund since 2018.
And is it not an option to do a combination?
There's a possibility, sure.
Okay.
But if we get the funding from don't we get some of the funding from the MS?
So if the project, if we, regardless of whether we borrowed or used stabilization funds, if the project was then approved to go to, to go through with a building project, we would get the 57% back. But the time, whether it is, what would happen or not, and the timing of when it would happen, if it did, is unknown.
And under MSBA, you have to put up the full amount. It's not they'll pay, pay as you go type of thing. You have to put up the full amount, spend it, and
No,
then you
you're
can get
back.
reimbursed. Assuming you are.
So I know, but Charlie, you had concerns about adding on to debt.
I've always been a little bit uneasy. East Bridgewater borrows more money on an every year basis than Halifax did. We basically limited our borrowing to debt exclusions. That was it. If we had, whatever could fit within the amount of money we had set aside for capital expenditures, that's what we did, and stuff that couldn't fit didn't get done. Obviously, it's a very legitimate purpose, but I also feel the capital stabilization fund is there for a particular reason for something like this. So I'm more inclined to recommend to the town that they use the capital stabilization fund. If we want to, but there's nothing wrong with bonding the money. It does mean, obviously, that you have to pay it back, and as Melanie mentioned, would have to be done in a 5-year period. So during those 5 years, money that we're gonna spend on principal and interest isn't gonna go to the normal operations of the town.
I do believe, though, if we do end up going forward with a building project, that can roll in
Okay.
to the project in total, but I could be wrong. Like, it could go into the length of,
Mhm. And I assume that obviously if we ever do something of a major sort of the central school, we'll be doing it's only gonna pass if we can do a debt exclusion.
Right. So I guess maybe I wish the capital folks were still
Can I
here,
ask
but-
a question? That
Yeah.
might be something that everybody knows, but somehow I've forgotten. How does the capital stabilization fund get built back up again?
Periodically, the town meeting may have extra money, available to it to
To
replenish it, yes.
okay.
There's no normal, stream that just
Mechanism.
continually goes in to build it up again. Town meeting needs to make that decision.
Okay.
Same for the regular general stabilization fund
Okay.
also.
I do know that the ambulance account will be putting in $125,000 in the spring as their final payment towards the
Oh, okay.
tower truck. Not, 125 versus 1.5 million is not the same, but I just wanted to.
That helps,
That
right?
is, yeah,
And
some
we
money
have-
that's going in there.
Capital was going to work on a 5-year plan, which is not done, correct? So we don't know,
What's coming up for cap.
that's
'cause
my concern. We don't know what's coming
Right.
up from a
Well,
capital
because
perspective.
If we were looking at, if we have our free cash right now, and after this town meeting, say we have $2 million in free cash. Say we use, I think we're on track to use about 500,000 towards the operating budget. Now we have 1.5. John's road repairs, say 500,000, give or take. Now we're at 1 million. If all the other capital projects, if we don't have any other major capital projects that come up, can $1 million go right into stabilization at town meeting in May? But we can't
And the
say
other
that.
point will be that, we talked a bit about the turf field, and the turf field is gonna be another major expenditure. That's
That's $1 million.
Yeah, and I'm seeing like I'm going both ways on that. To me, that, we're just gonna need to borrow the money for that. We can borrow the money for the feasibility study, we can
And then
borrow the
pay-
money for the turf field,
Right. If
we
borrow for
we
this,
certainly aren't gonna wanna take,
both from stabilization. We wouldn't.
I'm almost of the school of thought that we're not going to know the turf field until a little later in the fiscal year, when we should have a somewhat better, we'll be
Yes.
into the budget process.
Oh, I see.
We'll know what we think free cash might look like. We'll know what budgets are coming in at, what contracts are negotiated at.
and also what capital requests are being made and what the capital plan committee is gonna
And
recommend.
they'll have their 5-year plan hopefully together by then. So maybe we borrow the stabilization and then pay for the turf out of either free cash and/or stabilization in the spring when we have a better idea.
I have a quick question. How long do we borrow for? Does it depend?
Well, the feasibility study normally would be 5, though, as Melanie mentioned, because it could be part of the larger school project, eventually we could do 20.
We basically are told how long you can borrow for certain projects. We could always choose to borrow for less time, but you can't borrow, you can't if we're doing a roof and they say it's gonna last 20 years, we can't borrow for 40 years.
Yeah, so that's my question, if we wanted to do the turf and
I have to
it's,
check. I
it's
don't,
only like good for 8 or 10 years, we don't wanna borrow for 20 years.
We wouldn't be allowed
Okay.
to.
well, especially, you know, as John mentioned, the life of it is normally 8. My guess is we'll either be tied to 5 years or 10 years.
I think I have it in the email too, but not on me, because I did have that conversation when we were trying to figure out where to put that boiler money, because the turf was another thing that came up, but it wasn't, we weren't able to do that.
Okay.
Would timing kind of too depend on what we think interest rates might do, or would that be a factor, or I don't know?
We're gonna move forward with these projects one way or the other.
Yeah.
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 I mean, obviously, it should be, if we could time it, but we're gonna, you know, if this feasibility study is approved, then I would say, and then we have another period of time to get the feasibility study, we're gonna borrow the money at some point during 2024, probably earlier rather than later. Same thing for the turf field. If we borrow the money there, it's gonna be, well, the bill won't come due until fiscal '25, but nevertheless, we'll borrow the money at some point during the summer '24, I would say.
And from the MSBA perspective, they only have to know by December 29th that we approve the
Yes.
feasibility. The borrowing doesn't have to be in place by then.
The only thing they're gonna worry about is the wording of the article, which I will go over with them in the next couple of days.
Okay.
I'm gonna give them 2 wordings, one for stabilization, one for borrowing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because we'd have to run
So
that
we
by
try
town
to recommend
council.
one or the other.
Yeah, so I think
What's
that
the
we want to
same?
make a recommendation, should it be appropriate, borrow, or transfer? So, any thoughts?
Well, I think your point about timing and when we borrow versus when we appropriate or transfer is really good. I followed what you said, and I agree with what you laid out, that it makes sense to borrow at this point
Okay.
for this purpose.
Okay.
That's my belief.
Well, then I'll entertain a motion to recommend, should Article 6 pass, that it be funded through a borrowing.
I move that we recommend that Article 6 be,
Borrowed.
right, based
Funded
on
through a
borrowing,
Yep.
yes.
Okay, motion by Karen,
I'll second that motion.
second by Lisa. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. I think that's it, right? Okay. The last thing I have is we do have a letter from the Association of Town Finance Committees. There is such a thing. Probably a riveting group.
Hey, I went to their seminar once and the food was great. It was at Bridgewater State, nice and local.
So they're having, I think they're planning a spring conference in April of 2024. They don't say where it's at or when it is, but.
Is there a save the date at least?
Las Vegas?
No. It just
Las
says-
Vegas?
It just says we're planning a spring
Wouldn't that be
conference.
funny?
Okay.
Yeah, what?
Are they having their fall conference as well?
They have, so there's an annual meeting scheduled for November 3rd
Yes,
at
that's
the
the one.
Sharon Community Center. Mass Municipal Association Deputy Legislative Director Jackie Lavender Bird will be the opening speaker. And then Jeff Nutting will close the day with a look at community collaboration, how Finance Committee members work more effectively with other officials and committees. There's a workshop including Budgeting 101, the roles of treasurer collector, going green, sustainable energy and its financial impact, capital planning. Registration will open in September. So if anyone's interested in attending that on November 3rd, we can do that. There's also a financial committee handbook that was updated. Rebecca has the PDF, so I'll ask her to send that out to everybody, so everyone has that. And when we get the date for the conference, we'll see if anyone wants to go.
To Las Vegas.
So, yeah. No, that's okay. Okay, I don't think there's anything else before us.
Meeting minutes?
Do we have meeting minutes?
We probably do from the last
The
time we
last
met,
one, but I
right?
don't know if.
Hold on. So actually, yes, I'm sorry. We have the meeting minutes from July 17th, 2023. I will entertain a motion to approve them as printed.
I will approve that, make a motion to approve them as printed, the minutes as printed.
Okay,
I will
Not done.
second.
okay, motion by Lisa, second by Karen. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion to adjourn.
And I will agree with them. I will second that motion.
Motion by Karen, second by Lisa. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Comedy hour.